of an opening statement. With that, you can start the clock. In the summer of 2009, a year before the passage of Dodd-Frank, President Obama announced his vision of financial regulatory reform. From the East Room of the White House, he described a council that would, quote, bring together regulators across markets to coordinate and share information, to identify gaps in regulation, and tackle issues that don't fit neatly into an organizational chart, end quote. He said, quote, we're going to bring everyone together to take a broader view and a longer view to solve problems and oversight before they become a crisis, end quote. This was a moment where the urgency of passing financial regulatory reform and these necessary changes became very urgent, in the words, in order to prevent another crisis. 2.5 years after the enactment of Dodd-Frank, however, fewer than half of the mandated rules have been finalized. In fact, significant pieces of Dodd-Frank have yet to be promulgated, such as the Volcker Rule, the over-the-counter derivatives regulations, the qualified residential mortgage rule, and the definition and designation of systemically significant non-bank financial companies. Granted, Dodd-Frank issued a huge mandate requiring collaboration and consistency across several agencies, but there was a promise made in the creation of the Financial Stability Oversight Council. It was a promise of coordination and an effort to thwart a future crisis. However, after reviewing the GAO audit, the GAO being the branch of Congress to oversee the executive branch, to put in best practices and principles like private enterprises do with hiring consultants. The GAO is our consultant to review that, and they do a yeoman's task of that. The GAO audit of the Council and the Office of Financial Research indicates that these entities are far from delivering on that promise made by the President over 4 years ago. First, GAO's examination of the Council's transparency policies and its process to designate non-bank financial institutions for supervision by the Fed illustrates the fact that it has not provided the marketplace with a clear, rules-based framework to work within. Second, by examining FSOC's efforts to coordinate regulatory action among agencies and to identify systemic risks, including OFR's efforts in aid of those functions, it seems that neither of these agencies are presently equipped to discover potential future threats to the financial system and to proactively mitigate them. I find it especially disconcerting that after 2.5 years, GAO has found that the Council lacks systemic processes to identify future threats to the financial system in its annual reports, that it fails to distinguish future from current threats, and that it has failed to prioritize those threats that it has identified. I think it's important to point out that as a part of the GAO review process, the entity under review is given 60 days prior to publication of the report to issue a response letter addressing the GAO's findings. This is what it does with all agencies across government. I found it interesting that after 60 days, the response letter included in this report came from the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, Mary Miller, acting on behalf of the Treasury Secretary, and not as an official acting on behalf of the Council itself. This begs the question, if it's not even possible for the Council to come at the Council level to some level of consensus and agreement on a GAO report that's 63 pages long, how exactly do we expect the Council to coordinate actions across these existing regulators and to act nimbly in anticipating systemic-wide financial threats? The GAO has offered 10 recommendations in its review of the Financial Stability Oversight Council and the Office of Financial Research. I look forward to hearing from today's witnesses and on whether it is possible for the OFR and FSOC to work collaboratively with the institutions that currently exist. It is clear at the outset of reading the report that the FSOC as currently designed, isn't getting the job done. So with that, I recognize for 5 minutes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.